Well, hello, ladies.
Hi.
Hey there.
Thank y'all for spending some time hanging out and just having a conversation with me, and we're going to let everybody else kind of listen in. This has been a really cool thing for me to be able to sit down with multiple leaders in our church. And I'm also reminded that we have leaders that are paid, leaders that are partly paid, and leaders that are not paid at all. But it's been really cool. I'm so grateful for the people that God has put in our church who not only just believe in our church, but realize that they have something really significant to contribute. And you two are giving legs to a really important part of our vision. Every part's important. I think that's one of the things we've always tried to operate is every piece really matters. But today we're moving into that platform piece of the vision where we want to provide a platform that allows people to get outside the walls of the church, meet needs, and take the gospel to the world. And what you two do help us do that. So Jesse Green leads our Serve the City team, and Marshall Knight is actually giving leadership to now our global initiative. She's our global initiatives coordinator, which is something totally new this year, which is something that we really got off the ground with, then COVID hit.
Oh man, it was rough.
So we're having to navigate all that, but the platform that we talk about, it's both local and global. But before we kind of dive into that, let's let people get to know you guys a little bit because, Jesse, you are born and raised right here in Randleman, right?
Born and raised all my life.
So you went to school here, the whole 9 yards.
Graduated from Randleman High School.
That's funny.
Sure did, and I am very passionate. I love this community. I'm excited to raise a family here. I'm proud to say that I'm from this community, and as much as you spoke about us, I'm equally as excited to just be a part of this outreach and part of this ministry.
I was thinking as we were preparing to talk today, I remember when you and I first met, and I don't know if you remember.
I do remember.
We were doing something at Randleman High School for a young man named Timmy, and you were teaching, no, not the high school,
Yes,
the middle school.
Middle school, right.
And you were teaching there at that time, but you weren't coming to church here yet.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a crazy God story all in and of itself. I was a part of Victory Junction here for a while and got some amazing experience there. Never wanted to teach middle school at all. And completely, I know without a doubt that God orchestrated those events in my life for Timmy Luck specifically. I had been at Randleman 6 months.
Wow.
And was told that I would be the case manager and kind of help oversee and coordinate, his story a little bit there. And all of his needs at that time just did not intimidate me at all because of my experience right here in Randleman at Victory Junction. And
Wow.
It's just another neat piece of the puzzle and my story a little bit.
But yeah, you weren't a part of our church at that time, but we were partnering with you and helping do some stuff for him. And then how long have y'all been coming to Vintage?
October, 3 years.
Wow. That's crazy. Your story's a little bit different. You grew up in this area or no?
Yeah, in the Greensboro, Staley, Ashboro area.
Okay. Yeah. And now you and Rex and your family have been at Vintage for a while now. When did y'all start? Did y'all start coming when we were still at the high school?
No, it was right after you'd moved to the middle school.
Okay.
I was pregnant with Aubrielle. So she's 7, so it's been at least more than 7 years.
Wow.
That we've been coming.
That's cool.
It was great, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's cool for people to hear some of your story because you grew up in this area, so you giving leadership to local community-based initiatives is really important. And you have, ever since I've known you, you've had a heart for just ministry in general, but even like global initiatives is kind of in your DNA, just doing stuff internationally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was kind of what drew us to Vintage in the beginning, really, is I did what you did. So I grew up in the church, a very traditional church setting, like a lot of people do. And when I read through the book of Acts, what I saw there was not what I saw in my church. And I realized very early on that something was missing. For me, I was able to find that community when I engaged in missions activities. So international missions trips and being on those short-term missions teams really allowed me to experience that book of Acts type community. And so I've always had a passion for that. One of the things that I loved about Vintage really early on was that we did things like that initiative and where we partnered with schools. And I actually saw a church bringing the light into a place, into a school building where the gospel hasn't been allowed for a while.
Yeah.
And that out-of-the-box thinking is just, I tend to be somewhat of an out-of-the-box person, and so I really loved that.
Yeah.
And it just lines up so perfectly with who I am and what it is that God wants me to do.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So cool. How long have you been kind of the point person for Serve the City?
I would say a year and a half to 2 years.
Okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I've been a part of Serve the City a little bit longer, and then more so of a joint collaboration between Jasmine and myself all of last year, and then this year's been a little bit unique.
Yeah.
But
this year's definitely been unique. Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, for us, our mindset for both local and global is very similar. Like there's an alignment to it. It's just a matter of location. But one of the things, we talk about the churches that we grew up in. Churches I grew up in, missions was out there only. When people thought about missions, they thought about countries far away and that kind of thing. And what I never could understand is how can we reach out to the world and reach over needs in our own community. And so being that God has put us in Randleman, in Randolph County, I've always felt like our first responsibility is our city. And that's the mindset, right, that kind of Serve the City operates with.
Absolutely. And I would say my experience has been very similar, but also restricted to an event or one thing once or twice a year. And the Serve the City team and our mission is to provide opportunities for our church to love and serve our city on a regular basis. I've heard Jasmine say many times that, what we aim to do is help our church practice that muscle of serving. And the more that we practice that, the more routine it becomes and a part of our everyday lives, not just restricted to an event once or twice a year.
Yeah. Being on mission is not something that is scheduled on a calendar. It's, Serve the City gives us opportunities to collectively do things that we should individually be doing at all times. So, and I don't even think, because people ask me all the time, when are we going to do some outreach? I'm like, well, you should have done some yesterday and the day before. And don't wait for us as the church to tell you when to do it. But there's a lot of people that are new to our church. Unpack some of the things that we've done over the years, some of those opportunities that Serve the City has provided. So
one that's very relevant is our Thanksgiving meal initiative that we're currently in the middle of. We've done Dollar Club. Typically is done every other month, as well as a box initiative. And we've done different things such as a necessities box, providing the basic necessities, shampoo, soap, toothbrush, toothpaste, into schools. And we've started more conversations for opportunities in the future, looking at a foster care box and partnering with different organizations to support the community in different ways as well.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of people don't realize that how those boxes open a door. Creating that bridge that helps meet a need, but also create an opportunity for us to build a relationship that helps us get into a position where we can introduce people to Jesus. The number of people that maybe they were introduced to our church because they got a box of food on Thanksgiving, or they got a box of toiletry type items, and now when they hit something in their life that's tough or difficult, we're on their radar and we're who they call. And that opens a door for us to have spiritual conversations with people. And I don't think we realize the value in that sometimes, because I think people just think, oh, I'm just getting this box and I'm just giving somebody some necessities, not realizing that that's opening a door and creating an opportunity for people to have spiritual conversations.
Right, and I think it impacts more people than you even realize. I remember when I was a teacher at Randleman Middle School, and other things that we've done, provide the back to school boxes or support and show love to the staff at Randleman Middle or at different schools. But even being involved with a different church at the time, it was still just as much an impact to me to receive, just that small token of appreciation or love shown from this church.
Yeah. We, in this whole platform concept, there's two things that we think. Sometimes we need to pioneer. We need to create things to do to meet needs. But sometimes we partner. And you just mentioned, and you referenced it too, Marcel, the partnership that we had with the school has always been something we've tried to leverage to meet people's needs. And you saw that before you sat in this room on the teacher side of that.
Right, and now even more applicable, and that's what I think why I enjoy this position and enjoy this opportunity so much is because I am still involved in the school system. I do have a lot of contact with our school social workers and guidance counselors. In my current position, I'm able to travel to many different schools, and so I feel like God is definitely using me as a vessel to network and to partner with lots of different, even communities, surrounding communities, to really share God's love.
That's cool. And now from a global perspective, Marcel, you're stepping into something we've never had before, where we've had somebody that's kind of led the Serve the City team. Just this year, before the madness of COVID hit, we started developing a global initiatives team. And now you're kind of stepping into this global initiatives coordinator, director, whatever we're calling it, but kind of coordinating all that in a really good time. Because the way we've kind of always seen it is globally, if we can concentrate in an area for a while, we can see the greatest impact. We never have wanted to, there's tons of great missions organizations, tons of great need all over the world. And you could argue being in one of a million different places. But we've always kind of operated as, all right, let's invest in a singular area for a designated kind of prayerful amount of time, and let's make a big dent. And for years, that was Haiti. But then you and I had a conversation back in late winter before all this kind of happened. And I said, Marcel, we need leadership here. What was it about serving in this role that just said, yeah, like I want to do that?
Do you want the long answer or the short answer?
Either.
So missions has always been a big passion of mine. I grew up reading biographies of great missionaries like Mary Slessor, Scottish missionary to China, and David Livingstone, missionary to the entire continent of Africa. And I think that it sparked something in me. So I've been reading through the book of Jeremiah, and Jeremiah comes to this point in his journey where he's speaking God's word and he's getting really bad backlash. And so he says to himself, I'm just not going to speak God's words anymore. I'm just gonna zip my mouth. I'm not going to say nothing. But then he writes that God's word became like a fire, shut up in his bones. And he just couldn't stop. And for me, like that's what missions is. It's not a question of really why I'm passionate. It's like I am, and I can't not be.
Yeah.
But just like you, I always saw a discrepancy of churches either being heavily internationally focused or heavily local focused. Like finding a church that can do both is what I really want to see Vintage become, because like we are doing some awesome things locally with the Serve the City initiatives. You know, my family and our kids, we've delivered Thanksgiving dinners before, and just a lot of great things that we're doing here. What I'm excited about is being able to build a platform where where we can do both. Like people of vintage people, we can serve local and we can serve internationally. And that was really, it came to a head earlier this year where I just came up to you and I was like, hey man, I need to get involved. Who's in charge of your missions department?
And I said, how about you?
So I'm super excited. I've never led an entire missions department before. I have led various missions teams. So this is a new challenge for me, but I'm definitely up for it. We've got some excellent people here at Vintage who have already partnered up with me in prayer and some decision making, and so that I've got a sounding board. You know, it's not just me with all my harebrained ideas.
Yeah.
But man, yeah, I'm just so excited.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that I'm excited for this opportunity for others within our church as well. Like I was saying before, my passion and desire for local missions really was birthed out of participating in global missions. I've had the opportunity to travel, and not because I felt that call. You know, you hear, I've never been called, or I don't feel that calling, and I used to use those terms or say those things, but the Lord really just put me on a plane to Haiti 3 years ago. And in those opportunities for serving in that way, I learned what it means to truly look at people and to truly see people. And I think that that's so lost in our day-to-day activities and routines. And so I'm excited for others to experience that, because I think it directly impacts what local missions look like.
Yeah. Missions, whether local or global, all begins with like a burden and a brokenness that causes you to pay attention. Like observation is one of the greatest attributes that Jesus had. He's always paying attention and observing those things. And you know, you mentioned, I feel like we've always done a really good job locally. You know, especially when we were meeting in the school, our serve the city teams and that kind of thing. But it seems like our global initiatives was always kind of somewhat in the background, and local was in the foreground. And you know, where we've talked about how sometimes churches were so globally heavy and not locally heavy, I feel like at times we've been a little bit imbalanced in the other direction, because it is not an either or, it's a both and. And so our global initiatives were so many years limited just to the teams that we would take to Haiti every so often. And we did some child sponsorship and that kind of thing. But one of the things that you and I have been talking about is we want to put global missions as much kind of in the mindset of our church as local missions. Because you're right, they inspire one another. And so that even led to, you know, feel like God was maybe shifting us to find a spot that somewhat allows for more involvement and more connection. And so Marshall, talk about that kind of process that we've kind of waded through over the last year, finding a new spot, and even if you want to let people know kind of where we're going in the next few years.
Okay, all right. So it was a process, because as long as I've been at Vintage, Haiti has been the missions location. And I haven't gone, I'm gonna be honest with you, I've not been to Haiti yet. I would like to go. I have a lot of places on my bucket list that I want to go to.
Yeah.
That's one of them. But Matt and I were sitting down, we were having this conversation, and I've taken several missions trips over the years to a small country in Central America called Nicaragua. And I love it there. Got lots of friends, I have great connections, I have a wonderful partnership. So that was a location we were considering. But our conversation really came down to access. And this is kind of hard for Americans to understand, because we live in a country of so much excess that realistically we have access to so much more than we take advantage of most of the time in terms of resources. There's how many churches in Randolph County? 50 gajillion, million, bazillion churches.
Probably an accurate number.
And that's the same thing in Central America. It's the same thing in the Caribbean. These people, they have access to Jesus, and they have access to preachers, and they have access to churches. So we just asked ourselves the question, what if we went somewhere where there wasn't so much access? Like, What if we wanted to make a difference in the lives of people who've been forgotten by other people, by other churches, just like we do with Serve the City? Like who can we go to that's underserved? Where can we make an impact where it's needed, not just where it's fun, not just where we feel like the hero because we can come in and we can throw resources and, oh, the Americans are here to save us. And I don't mean that in a rude way, but it's that myth of manifest destiny is what it is, where a lot of times you can feel good after you go on a missions trip, but then what's your actual long-term impact?
Yeah.
And I know this is the same thing. It's the same structure that we work around in our local operation. Like we used to do the trunk or treat. It was a lot of fun. We felt great. Everybody was happy. But what was the impact that we were doing? And so that's really what it came down for us in terms of making a plan for moving forward on the global initiative. And we did a lot of prayer. And I interviewed a lot of really awesome missionaries in several different parts of the world. And we came together as a team and we prayed about it and we talked about it. And then we decided to partner with a specific area. You want to tell them?
Before we do that, like
Okay.
you're so right. I think that's one of the things that we always, as a church, are always trying to figure out that, where is the greatest chance for us to make the most impact now? And how do we adapt initiatives locally and globally? And where's God leading us in this? And as much as maybe we want to keep doing certain things or stay in certain areas, we really felt like, and especially in the global area, felt like God was shifting us. And my heart will always be in Haiti. I know Jesse has a heart for Haiti, and we will always do things in Haiti personally and that kind of thing. But you're right, we started praying about, all right, what's the best thing to get the most amount of people in our church connected to investing in global initiatives? And that led to the decision we made.
Well, and I think another thing that we really considered, and I kind of briefly mentioned it earlier, is like we wanted to partner with missionaries in a location where they are serving their local community, right? So an international community, but it's local to those missionaries. They're serving their local community in similar ways that we serve ours.
Yeah.
And they have people involved in similar ways that we get our people involved. So we settled on a partnership where the strategy that these missionaries are using to reach the local community is small groups. It is dinner luncheons. It is investing in their local schools and playing soccer at the park. So a lot of the same strategies that we use translate directly.
Yeah.
Top 11 most safe country in the world. So that was important to me because I have small kids and I want to take them. But yeah, we decided to partner with a really awesome couple, Jason and Krenza McFredericks, in the Czech Republic. And that decision came after a lot of prayer. But we're super excited because I've never been to the Czech Republic.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to mention, you talked about access, and just as much as we want to be able to provide access to Jesus, we need to be able to get there. And that's one unfortunate challenge when we talk about Haiti, is that it's not easy to get there.
Yeah. Because our hope is, as we move forward in this season, and we haven't really set a timeline yet of how long we're going to invest there. We just feel like God's called us there for now. We wanted like whole families to be able to participate in this. And that's hard and challenging in certain areas of the world, to take younger kids and things like that. And that was one thing that we talked about too, is what's an area that needs, all areas need Jesus, but what's one area that allows us to get all of our church involved, for the whole family to be able to experience trips together and go and minister so they come back, and that global connection builds local passion and that kind of stuff. And Czech Republic is going to be an awesome place to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's gonna be great for so many reasons. For starters, the need is high, and sometimes for those of us that grew up in a traditional church setting where you had a missionary who went and lived somewhere that took 2 or 3 weeks to get into by boat or canoe, like, jungle living type missionaries, the real missionaries. It's kind of hard to say, like, wait, you're going to a European country? Like, that's like, you're taking a European vacation as a missions trip. But I think what you got to understand is, like, the Czech Republic is what we consider a post-Christian society. Post-Christian meaning that at one time this area was full of churches and full of Christians and had thriving church communities, and they're not there now. The only churches that these people see are those massive stone cathedrals that, like, nobody goes to. They're tourist attractions.
Yeah, museums. Yeah.
This country it's recovering from communism. Like, one of the first places that Nazi Germany invaded is what's now the Czech Republic. So you can imagine, like, the generational devastation that's taken place, not just socially, not just economically, but spiritually. And so the people that live there, if they have any knowledge of Jesus, it's merely an academic knowledge. Hey, there was a historical person, his name was Jesus, and that's about all they know.
Yeah.
And what I see in our local area in the United States and all across the United States is there's a lot of people that have an academic knowledge of Jesus. Oh yeah, there's a guy named Jesus, and these people go to church and they talk about him, and that's about it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of similarities, and I'm very excited to just partner with the missionaries. They've been there for years, they've raised their kids there, and they have a lot of strategies for sharing the gospel in a non-aggressive, non-cheesy, but very effective way that I can see us implementing in our Serve the City initiatives, in our life groups, in our day-to-day, everyday what we do. A lot of people, when they think of missions, they think of the Great Commission that Jesus gave in Matthew 28:19, where he says, go into all the world and go into all the nations and make disciples of all people, right? Baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. I don't know that nation's the best translation there. The Good News translation actually says it like this: everywhere you go and everyone you meet, make disciples out of them and teach them about me. And I think that's more accurately what it is that we do at Vintage. And you don't have to cross a country border and get a passport and a visa to do that. You can do that here, and you can do that there. And the only difference, like you said, is location.
Yeah. I think what both of you are trying to do is create opportunities to get people to serve, with the hopes that when you participate in a Serve the City event, or when you participate in a global initiative, maybe a missions trip, that God is shaping the spiritual DNA of you so that it becomes a regular part of your life. Because I think you're right. It's not going as a destination, it's more as you are going throughout your life. And what your teams do is start to build that into their DNA. And I love, even what I'm hearing as I hear you guys talk, the connection between these two ministries and the alignment and the symmetry. And, so Jesse, as you think about the future of Serve the City, what's in your heart? Like, what do you hope comes out of what we do as these initiatives evolve?
My greatest hope is that it becomes very natural for the church body to live and love like Jesus, to see a need and to act upon it and not wait for a group of people or a team. And maybe it is a group of people, or maybe it's you call up your friends and say, hey, I noticed this, or I was made aware of this today. Let's figure out how we can support the situation or show love. And overall, just awareness of having a better picture of truly what it looks like to live and love like Jesus. Not just participating in events or filling a box, but having just that deeper understanding of God's love is so much greater and so so much more rich than I feel like we give him credit for, or that we even acknowledge a lot of times. And so really, I think being a part of local or global missions just allows more opportunity for God to mold your heart to be more in line of who he truly is and what love really means.
That's good. Michelle, anything you want to add to that? That sums it up pretty good.
No, I mean, my hope is that people in Vintage, if you're attracted to global missions, that you definitely go on those trips. But if you don't, if you like sleeping in your own bed at night, you can do the same thing and have the same impact right here with the people that are here that need you.
Yeah.
And that's the exciting thing to me.
Yeah. I think, man, you guys have nailed it. When we started Vintage, I never wanted outreach and missions to become these stagnant, static, calendared, scheduled things. That we would leverage what we provide collectively as a body to create and inspire people to want to live that in their daily lives. That they can see, hey, I went on a missions trip and told people about Jesus. I can do that in my office and in my home. I delivered a Thanksgiving meal with Serve the City, but I can also meet the need of my neighbor and ultimately bridging it all back to the gospel. And so thank you for your leadership, both of you. I think what's in the future because of what you two are doing is going to greatly shape our church and our community and our world in a lot of ways. Appreciate you both.